Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Liezel Lane joining us here again, myteenlifecoach.com. She is back in action. We missed her while she was away. Not to say we don't love your other coaches, but we did miss you. myteenlifecoach.com. Liezel, so where were you? Were you working?
Yeah, so every now and again I'll be on a project, consulting for mental health companies, schools, after school places, things like that. And it's really good. It's a nice different part of my job once in a while. So it's good to be back though.
Well, excited to have. Did you go anywhere fun or were you close by?
No, it was local. Yeah.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
cool. I know you're helping families, adolescents, teenagers to get through in so many different avenues. It's myteenlifecoach.com. And don't forget, you can text 770-235-8202 because you provide an array of services for everyone. What did you want to discuss for today?
My gosh, it's so good to be back, Joel. Thank you so much. And I do love our colors together today, I have to say.
Me too. We're all, in case you just listened, we got blue on blue. We're matching the jellyfish and the whole logo today.
The whole thing. It was like it was planned.
Yeah.
Today I'm going to talk about technology again. I want us to revisit that in a little bit of a deeper sense because more science and more data is coming forward. And it spurred me because a parent said to me this last week, when my kid is on their phone, they glaze over and go to sleep. Like addiction, like self-medicating. And I reflected because technology is here. It's ingrained in every single part of our lives. And I was just reflecting as a professional because here I am. I'm on Zoom with teenagers every day. I use YouTube, and games and things. So, even as a practice, I am, using online resources to help me with my business. So I kind of had a reflection moment and thought to myself, like, are we hurting? Are we helping? We focus a lot on the social media aspect of stuff, but it's everywhere. It's all around us. So even in my even in my session. So anyway, I did some research. I was just doing a bit of reading because when you're in a field like this, you have to keep up with anything that's coming new. And of course, since COVID and all of that, so all kinds of research has now developed since the start of social media and all the things that you and I've talked about over time. But I was reading an article from the American Psychological Association, and there was a new article that came out in February this year. So I thought, looks interesting. Let me have a look at this. And this was what was interesting for me. So the article is done by the chief scientist of APA. And the title of it was Harms and Benefits of Social Media for Kids. And so just looking at the data, just looking at kind of what their findings were, the first thing they said was that there are two critical, and you and I have talked about this before, so we already know this. There are two critical periods of adaptive neural development, right? So how the brain is developing the synapses, how everything is happening. And there's two different critical parts of your life where that starts, where it's really critical in terms of the development phase. And the first one is the first year of life, obviously. So immediately, I think about young parents who don't want to deal with crying babies. So what do? They hand over the phone to baby, right? Like just because it's a parenting tactic. And the second one is when they're between 10 and 25 years old. So that's 15 years. That's a long, long time where that adaptive neural development is taking place. And so I kind of looked at this and I thought, okay, relevant? Yes or no? Yes, absolutely relevant, because we already know that our teenagers to young adults, they crave social affirmation. That's everything in their lives. It's everything that is going on is am I accepted? Where do I belong? Where don't I belong? Where do I fit in? Where don't I fit in? And so, yeah, it is totally relevant. But when you are not doing anything in moderation, it's like drinking from the fire hose, right?
Yeah.
And I love the way that he talked about this in the article. He says, he calls it empty calories of social interaction. Empty calories of social interaction. So yeah, that's kind of a beautiful analogy, and it got my brain working because, there's interactions when you have Thanksgiving, family gatherings, stuff like that. There's that interaction. There's interaction like what you and I are having right now, which is meaningful, be it online, it's meaningful. But when it's empty, it's just this empty scrolling through, consuming whatever is there. And so, thinking about it a little bit, I was like, what exactly does that mean? So empty calories in social interaction would be something like wanting to likes all the time, right? Comparing yourself to other people all the time. In the dieting world, they talk about fog eating.
Yeah.
It's the social media version of fog eating. Just kind of like sitting on the couch with popcorn. It's kind of like a metaphor for that. You're just consuming, not even thinking about it. And then of course, glamorizing of harmful practices over time. So now you've got this fire hose of empty calories of social interaction, like just coming at you, because when kids are 10 years old plus, let's face it, we're not limiting or really managing actively how much exposure they have to different online platforms and things like that. So you and I have been talking about how kids, are having sleep issues, more and more sleep issues. And so very often I'll be working with a teenager and they'll be telling me, like, I used to sleep so well and now I don't sleep so well anymore. So first of all, like one of the most common things is, and this is just like a side note, is like these LED lights around their bedrooms are very fashionable and in right now, because it creates like an emo kind of environment for them. But it's blue light, it's LED, it's the equivalent of having 24 sports bar TVs in your bedroom. So they're not getting, their brains are not shutting off. Same thing is when, they'll say to mom and dad, I can't sleep, so I want my phone so I can listen to music. Well, that's not what happens, right? We get tempted, we get up in the middle of the night, we start scrolling through our social media, or we're just looking at YouTube videos, whether it even be a podcast, but there's just no switching off, so to speak. So because of that, kids are having sleep issues, teenagers are having sleep issues. We already know that the research says that if you don't get enough sleep, chances are your grades are going to go down, chances are your stress is going to go up. And now lately, they've been able to draw a direct correlation between that and car accidents in teenagers, right? So teenagers who are driving, who are, sleep deprived or stressed out in high traffic situations, etc. I mean, I think about my girls when they had to travel to school. They were in a magnet school, and they had to travel like 13, 14, 15 miles to school, right? So let's just go back through that and recap. They crave the social affirmations. They're receiving all of this through a fire hose of what we're now calling empty calorie social interactions. And it's having an effect on their basic development from a brain perspective, their sleep patterns, all of those things, right? So we already know this. None of this is really much, newer for us in terms of like everything that we've talked about over time. So I turned back to my reflection, and I think back to that initial question: are we hurting? Are we helping? How, as a parent, as a professional in the field, am I helping the pervasiveness of this practice, where we're afraid to say to kids, teenagers in particular, like, no, just no on these things when it comes to the technology addiction, the self-medicating. I feel stressed out, I can't sleep, so I'm just going to go on my phone.
Yeah.
Right. So the question I'm asking myself is, how can I build healthy measures around something that's just not going to go away? Because let's face it, there's not a lot of, they were talking about this in the article, like the Child Protection Act, Digital Protection Act, all the different, measures that are trying to come into place. It's just, it hasn't happened fast enough, and it hasn't been effective enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I turned back to this whole calories. I love this thing. The empty calorie social interaction. I just love that statement. It's really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, well, why wouldn't I treat the tech issue just like I would candy? If we're talking about empty calories, let's go there. Let's talk about the empty calories.
Let's do it.
Let's go for it, right? So here are some of my, I love to draw comparisons and do the things.
Sure.
So I'm going to go off of just the rules that I grew up with, but it's like, okay, sweets and candies and cake and icing and all that is acceptable. It's good, like when you have gatherings, when you have celebrations. So how would I use that metaphor for technology? Well, technology can be celebrated to use to build pro-social interactions in an online setting between teens and adults, or like you and me, the way we're interacting right now. So, okay, let me apply that to my practice. We're going to be doing a summer intensive, and one of the cohorts is going to be online. That would be a celebratory, that would be a gathering, that would be a thing where the online / social media presence would be not empty calories. It would be, the healthier version of that thing, right? So, okay, so if candy and sweets and stuff, empty calories are okay for like celebrations and stuff or gatherings, that could apply here. Technology in its broadest sense can be used for positive social interactions in an online setting. That would not apply to social media, because there you're just consuming, there's no backwards and forwards. So if it's going to be a gathering, there needs to be a backwards and forwards interaction. So from a parenting perspective, that might be one guideline is my teenager going to be interacting with somebody? Are they on FaceTime with their friends, for example? Or are they texting on Snapchat together? Is there an actual interaction taking place? And okay, yes. And then timing we'll talk about in a little bit, right? So that's one part where, does it make sense what I'm saying? Like where the candy metaphor can be used in a positive sense? Does it make sense?
Do it that way, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. So here's the second one. So one of the rules that we grow up is no candy before bedtime. Yeah. Right? Because then what are we going to be going up the walls, right? So no candy before bedtime and no candy in your bedroom. All right. No technology before bedtime, no technology in your bedroom. Well, let's be real. Let's be real about that. No technology before bed. That's reasonable. An hour before bed, 2 hours before bed. If you had dessert after dinner and you had some treats for that hour, you let that hour go by, then you start getting ready for bed, right?
Yeah.
If it's your teenager. So, okay, an hour after dinner every night. Okay, you can have some dessert. You can have some technology, right? And same thing for the bedroom. I have a client who, she, by her own admission, talks about how she just loses herself when she takes her phone into her bedroom. She just goes into this trance-like space once she gets on her phone, and she loses time completely. So parents who are using that authoritative parenting style just need to put that boundary in place. You can go sit in the living room, you can go sit in the den, you can go sit in the dining room and go be with your technology, but not going to the bedroom.
Yeah.
Right? And we'll talk about it's easy to say and not so easy to do, but we'll talk about that. Here's a third one. Some families are like, okay, if you have done a good job this week, you can have candy on Friday, right? Friday candy day.
We do so on our
Right?
weekends. Yes, yes.
Yeah, right. So, okay, that could be reasonable. Like maybe Fridays and Saturdays, maybe they could have a little bit of extra time. Maybe they could be like a, if your chores are done, you've done your laundry, your room is clean, whatever, like, yeah, there's a transaction there, right? I did this, you can have that. So that's kind of like speaks for itself. So now when we think about social media, Zoom, online stuff, all technology, it's like having candy all over the house. We don't do that. We put candy in the jar. We put the cookies in the jar. We put the jar on top of the thing, right? So there needs to be some form of home-like structure around where is technology, how is it being used, where is it spatially in our home. It's not when you're going to the bathroom, for example. You're not going to go sit in the bathroom for 2 hours
My
with your
8-year-old
phone.
loves that. I said, no. I said, that's disgusting. Why sit in there while you're going to the bathroom and it's just a bad habit. But I have so much issues with this technology stuff, and even something that happened today I want to share in a little bit.
Oh yes, absolutely. So yeah, I'll punt it back to you in a little bit. So I'll actually start with a cool story. So when my youngest was about 3 or 4 years old, she had the sweetest tooth and she knew exactly where to find the chocolate. And she was so cute because she was convinced that nobody could see her. So she would go steal the chocolate and she would go sit like completely exposed, but facing the corner of the dining room. And she would go sit there, turn herself into the corner, face the corner, and she would be munching that chocolate like everything. And everybody's there because we had an open plan. So the kitchen's there, that everybody's around. And she's convinced that nobody can see her until, of course, I'm like, Zaya, and then she would look around and she'd be like, oh my gosh, everybody, like, oh my gosh, caught, like they can see me.
Yep.
How is it that they can see me? And that's what happens with teenagers is they go so into this world that they forget that there are people in the room, So yeah, it was so cute and we all had giggles and it's one of those favorite family stories that we tell, but that's where it stays, right? Because it doesn't translate to this place, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, from the technology metaphor standpoint, for me as a when I'm advising parents or in the consulting work that I did over the last week and so forth, it's like if you can draw these parallels to other real things in life that were maybe a little bit more basic or old school, it can push or elevate parents to like try to hold themselves to higher standards as well. Like let me step up my parenting and not feel so disempowered just because it's technology. It's like debunk the power that technology has over me as an adult, as a parent, because if I look at it as, candy, the candy version of technology, there's something to work with there. So tell me about your thing now.
It's a few things. It's technology related because the routine is it's 7:30 they get up and then we go downstairs and I usually let them watch their iPads and let them eat breakfast. But lately they're not getting off that. We got to brush her after breakfast. Now they get dressed the night before or in the morning. But then the rule is, okay, after breakfast, you brush your teeth and we put our socks on, we go to the bus. Or I'd like to do it earlier, but then they'll never get off the iPad. So now they're stuck on the iPad. So I said tomorrow starts the new rule. You eat breakfast, no iPad. You can watch TV. As soon as you're done with breakfast, you brush your teeth, then I'll give you the iPad because it's always a fight getting out the door of they're not coming then. Now we're rushing for the bus. Every day it's the same pattern. And it's got to stop. It's unbearable. But technology is just, and these kids. And then also when I talk to, if I let them go on the iPad before dinner and I sit there and I have to say, how many times do I have to call like your name? Like Austin, Boston. It becomes like Alvin and the Chipmunks. And then he gets startled and upset and the yelling, and I'm like, but you're not listening. Like there's some like disconnect. Like I don't know. You mentioned the word trance. Does it really put you in a trance?
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
it does. Because you're active, your brain is actively, engaged in what's active, like real in front of them. But then there's these all these subliminal things that are like going in, and there's just so much there to be entertained by. Or in a teenager's case, like looking for affirmations, looking for what can I relate to, what can be mine, what can I connect with. They get lost in that. When the kids are younger, it's a little bit more just the entertainment kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
But think about it, it's like I can't eat breakfast unless I have my iPad. That addiction thing starts to become associated with that. I have to eat while I have technology in front of me. It's kind of like in the olden days before, like, before we even had all this technology. It was like I remember the old-fashioned commercials, or people would say, switch the TV off during dinner time so that you're forcing each other to have conversation. Then TV dinners became a thing, right? And so TV dinners, and so that was just a different form of it. And part, let me just call out and name out that for as stressed out as parents are, and how parents are just trying to use a little bit of that to make their lives a little bit easier, it feels easy at the time because you're ingratiating an impulse. You're ingratiating an impulse with the kids. But then when it becomes a set behavior, then you got to break that. And then the work is much harder to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with all of this, it's great, but the toughest part is for parents to be consistent and hold the line on those things, because in this particular story or metaphor that we're talking about right now, if they are having so much technology or unrestricted technology from 10 to 13, 14 years old, by the time they're 15, 16 years old, they've got sleep issues. Then they're not school tired, then they're not able to pass it, then they're being, everything starts to get compromised from that perspective. And so it feels like, oh, I've got a breather in this very moment in time, but it has definitely long-term ramifications. So the fact that you've caught onto that with the boys, I think is awesome. Like
Wish me luck getting
give
through it and breaking the habit, though. But I will try my best. But it
I
starts
hear
tomorrow.
you. Like, give them Legos. Give them 10 Legos and say you could find 10 different ways how to build this Lego while you're having breakfast.
Yeah, it's so
You
true.
know, in some cases, I have a family who actually uses Lego as a huge opportunity,
Really?
very creatively, to get them to not be so numb in the technology part.
Oh,
That they actually have these competitions, and they'll say, okay, for the one who makes this, this Lego, you'll get like $2 or whatever. Like, so they're using incentives a little bit differently, but it's creating a different dynamic, because now they're actually conversing. There's a little bit of competitive talk and smack talk happening, which builds those interpersonal skills a little bit more, so it's like sometimes going back to the old way of doing things is the easiest way to do it. We just struggle now with being creative around those things, But yeah, like, try to maybe substitute that for, a while, until they forget that they even, had a thing with iPads. Do they like Legos?
No, they don't. I can't stand Legos. I finally put them all in bins in the garage because there's just pieces everywhere. I don't, no offense to Legos, even took them to Legoland. I just don't understand the fascination, because you buy a kit, you lose the piece, and then they don't want it anymore. And there's just Legos everywhere, and we're always stepping on them, getting hurt. So no, but I gotta think of
and they
something
don't make
else.
those basic ones anymore. It's so
Yes,
complicated now,
I
right?
know, I know. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Well,
so there has to be something. We have to find something, Jill.
all right, thank you. And unfortunately, we're just about out of time. We got 2 minutes left, Liezel. What do you want to
Totally.
share before we go?
Yeah, so get hold of us. We're doing a summer intensive for high school kiddos to build academic resilience for the next school year. And if you have some tech issues with your teenager, definitely give us a call. So www.myteenlifecoach.com at 770-235-8202. Time went by really fast today.
Okay, so it does. Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon. And I'll let you know how I'm doing next week. We'll see how it goes.
Good luck,
Okay.
Jill.
Thank you. You too. Always.
All
Pleasure
right.
working with you. MyTeenLifeCoach.com. Text her 770-235-8202. Have a great day. Bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.